WNYC Studios is supported by Odoo. When you buy business software from lots of vendors, the costs add up and it gets complicated and confusing. Odoo solves this. It's a single company that sells a suite of enterprise apps that handles everything from accounting to inventory to sales. Odoo is all connected on a single platform in a simple and affordable way. You can save money without missing out on the features you need. Check out Odoo at odoo.com. That's odoo.com.
It's the Bryan Show on WNYC. Good morning, everyone. This will be a different kind of show today. Beginning around 10:30, we'll have our annual health convening. That's a roughly 90-minute special that we do once a year on a major public health topic with support from the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation. Today, our health convening takes on ultra-processed foods. What's the actual science about what makes a food ultra-processed? What health risks are actually associated with different kinds? One interesting finding from a researcher who will join us, there seems to be a big gender difference in the colorectal cancer risk from a certain category of ultra-processed foods. We'll get into that. She'll explain why women seem more susceptible. Of course, colorectal cancer, if you've seen these news headlines in recent years, is really rising among younger adults in particular, and ultra-processed foods are suspected, but it's a very general term, and we're going to try to get more specific. We'll also have former FDA Commissioner David Kessler, who's proposing specific new ways to regulate ultra-processed foods and get his take on whether, RFK Jr. just talks tough on ultra-processed food corporations or is actually doing anything as Health and Human Services Secretary. So we'll have David Kessler and two other guests and take your questions as well in our 2026 health convening beginning in about a half hour. But before we talk about ultra-processed foods, let's talk about President Trump and his version of ultra-masculinity. His 80th birthday spectacle on the White House lawn, largely at taxpayer expense on Sunday, was designed to associate him with ultimate fighting or mixed martial arts. That has a particular audience and a particular meaning, right? On a more consequential note, Foreign Policy magazine had an article last year, which I think we are all living out, called "Hypermasculinity is Driving U.S. Foreign Policy. Trump's approach to Iran shows that America's crisis of manhood has hit the global stage." And that was months before he started the current war, using language, as he has in this war, like a whole civilization will die. And the way Trump treats female journalists. Well, we saw that again in his angry exchange with Meet the Press host Kristen Welker last week when he claimed, without evidence, that another election had been rigged, this time the California primary.
Do you think it's appropriate that they have an election and 5 days later they're nowhere close to picking a winner?
State and local officials acknowledge they are slow. They're urging.
No, they're crooked.
They're urging the votes to be counted quickly. That's how they vote in
They're crooked,
California.
just like you're crooked. Your press is crooked, and Meet the Press is crooked.
To be fair, I'm not crooked, but let's
Really?
Let's
Well,
continue.
you play right into their hands.
Let's continue.
You're either crooked or you're stupid.
Either crooked or you're stupid. With us in just a minute will be MS Now anchor Katy Tur, who we might think of as the original female punching bag for Trump in his presidential era. Remember these moments from the 2016 campaign, criticized as literally putting the journalist in physical danger when he taunted her in front of riled-up crowds at his campaign rallies? Here's one.
There's something happening. They're not reporting it. Katy, you're not reporting it, Katy. But there's something happening, Katy. There's something happening, Katy.
And this one might have been even worse.
She's back there, little Katy. She's back there. What a lie it was. No, what a lie. Katy Tur.
Katy Tur survived those taunts, wrote a book about the experience called Unbelievable, another memoir more recently called Rough Draft, and has been an MSNBC, now called MS Now, anchor for most of the time since. Her new show on the network called This Moment, airs weekdays 2 to 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Among other things, she's received the Edward R. Murrow Award for breaking news coverage of the January 6th insurrection, an Emmy for coverage of Hurricane Irene, and a Gracie Award for reporting on the Sandy Hook Elementary School massacre in Connecticut. She anchors from New York, and the network says she brings a New York angle to the national issues she discusses, including coverage of Trump and Mayor Zohran Mamdani. We'll touch on some Iran and midterms news, an interesting commentary Katy had yesterday on secession movements brewing in both liberal and conservative states, and yes, the president's penchant for smackdown politics, which often seem especially unbound when he's addressing women. Katy, thanks for coming on. Welcome back to WNYC.
Thank you so much for having me. I hope that is not on my gravestone, OG punching bag. I need to be known for something more than that.
There you go. Well, obviously, with those accolades that I ticked off there, more than that. But listeners, your calls and texts are welcome at 212-433. WNYC. I'm thinking maybe on 3 tracks, folks. News of the day, including the midterms, Trump's treatment of Kristen Welker, and the Iran war sorta kinda won't release the details ceasefire, Katy's new show in the place of MS Now in the media landscape, and this topic of increasing interest in secession movements on the left and right. Listeners, would you be interested in maybe separate countries get, I don't know, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, California, Oregon, Washington, maybe others into one group, and other mostly southern states, maybe some Midwestern ones into the United States of MAGA? Good, bad, intriguing at all to you or not? 212-433. WNYC 433-9692. As always, you can call or you can text. Katy, when I saw that Kristen Welker moment on Meet the Press last week, it definitely reminded me of the way he repeatedly singled you out on the campaign trail back in 2016. What did you think when you saw that exchange?
I was so impressed with Kristen. I think she is a phenomenal journalist, and she really held him to it. I thought going at him with one question on where the evidence is regarding his claims that California was rigged was perfect. And he can't answer those questions because he does not have any evidence. He's been in this game a long time. We all have. We all know that California takes a long time to count. It's no surprise. It's nothing new. It's the way they do business out there. And it's also no surprise that Donald Trump would claim it's rigged because that's part of how he wins, even when he loses, or tries to win, even when he loses. So I thought Kristen just did, a bang-up job holding his feet to the fire. And watching him unravel like that says a lot more about him than it does about her.
Yeah, unravel like that. He either really believes it or he's a very good showman, which I guess we know he is, at putting on an angry face, insisted, if you would only look, you would see that it was rigged, while he continues to refuse to present any specific evidence when pressed.
Well, listen, I mean, the guy has now, I've been covering him for 11 years. I think you laid it out pretty well. I've got 11 years, I think, almost to the day, Bryan, is when I first started following Donald Trump full time.
Oh, right, because that down the escalator in Trump Tower thing, it was like June 15th, 2015, like a year ago this week, something like that, right?
It's been a long, long, long time. And he has, listen, he's always surrounded himself with people who tell him what he wants to hear. But throughout his political career, he has had people push back until this term. Now it is all yes men around him. And he is not used to hearing anyone tell him no or that he's wrong. Or if they do, they tiptoe around it. Look at Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan's great reporting about how we got into the Iran war and the Situation Room reporting that they have, that the White House, by the way, is apparently worried, according to Axios, they might have tapes of in the Situation Room. They're not disputing the reporting. They're worried that they might have tapes of these conversations. If you look at it, all of the aides tell him this is a bad idea. But they also dance around whether, it's okay. If you want to do it, it's okay. I'm paraphrasing, obviously. They don't just go outright and say, if you do this, X will happen. If you do this, Y is a big possibility. It's not a good idea. As every other president has been told, this is a man who's surrounding himself with people who always tell him what he wants to hear. So when he goes up and speaks to a reporter who is trying to get him to justify a claim or present evidence for a claim and is not just telling him what he wants to hear, he unravels. I mean, that's always been the case, Bryan. That's not new, but it is more intense now than it's ever been. He's 80 years old. He's more fully himself. He is not being told no, and he is hyper focused on his own legacy, his own image, and what he wants to happen, regardless of the reality around him.
Yeah, and one of the things that I wonder if it went by so quickly in that exchange with Kristen Welker that a lot of viewers may not have noticed it, is that she threw in there one time when Trump was trying to talk over her, but the Republicans are doing well. and that's the way it turned out. Steve Hilton came in one of the top two to be in the runoff for governor. Tom Steyer, who was the other main Democrat who was competing in addition to Becerra, he did not get in. So the Republican won as much as the Republican could win, which is to get into the runoff.
Yeah, that's very true. Also, California is such an interesting place. We have, I say we because I am a Californian, we have elected Republicans to higher office in California many times in the past. Reagan, Republican, governor of California. Arnold Schwarzenegger, Republican, governor of California. So it's not unheard of. There is a streak within the California electorate. So Steve Hilton is a real competitor against Javier Becerra right now, despite what Donald Trump, wants to convey, that it's all being rigged. He is a real competitor. California, though, has become so much. They don't like Donald Trump. So the biggest obstacle for Steve Hilton is not being a Republican. It's not even necessarily the Republican Party. It's the association with Donald Trump. It's Republicans' unfailing loyalty and adherence to whatever Donald Trump wants to believe or say. I mean, even Steve Hilton has had this issue. He won't go on the record and say that Joe Biden won the 2020 election. He can't, because he risks alienating Donald Trump. And that's going to be a big turnoff to California voters, much more than the R in front of his name.
Interesting. Of course, he calls journalists the enemy of the people in general. But in your experience and from what you observe, does he treat women journalists differently in public displays than male journalists?
I've gotten this question so much, and he's disrespectful to everybody, men included, but he does reserve a special vitriol and condescension toward women. Just the way he speaks to them. Shut up, piggy, he said the other day.
Whoa.
To a woman. Sit down, he used to tell me. He called me little. I mean, he does try to diminish women in a way that he doesn't quite do with men, even though, I mean, he's dismissive of everybody in the press.
Do I remember correctly that you wrote in your book about covering that campaign that you needed private security after a certain point?
Yeah, NBC, we hired private security that basically they were with me everywhere, outside of Trump Tower, at every single rally. Yeah, it was intense. It was really intense because he would call me out in the crowd and point everybody in my direction and say that I was a liar. I mean, in really hot moments, too. Like when he announced the Muslim ban, everybody in the crowd he was like stoking this anger. It felt like a tinderbox. He was claiming that Muslims were coming in to destroy America, and we have to block them all from coming in until, quote, we figure out what the hell is going on. And he was really whipping the crowd into a frenzy. And in that moment, we were inside the belly of a warship in South Carolina. In that moment, he turns around or he tells everybody to turn around and look at me. And I'm like penned in by these bicycle racks up against a corner. Look at her. Look at little Katy. She's a liar. I mean, that was a moment that Secret Service literally walked me to my car. And they told me after that they always had eyes on me at the rally just in case, at rallies, which was insane. But it blew up. It wasn't just me. It was then every reporter basically needed private security. Every network hired private security. And that continues, by the way, to this day, Bryan. That wasn't a one-off thing. It didn't just happen in that election cycle. It now is standard pretty much for all campaign events.
I see that some texts and calls are starting to come in on the question that I teased out of your commentary yesterday on your show about the right and the left having secession movements now. One person writes simply, yes, free New York City. Another one on the other side of that doesn't like raising the topic, says starting to talk about it is starting the downward slide to our Brexit. Why don't you understand that what is driving that discussion and so many others has been carefully created by the Trump-Russia access? One more, I've thought for a long time that we should be two different countries. Think of how much better off we would be. But hold that thought, because we're going to get to that part of the conversation with my guest, Katy Tur. If you're just joining us, MS Now anchor from 2 to 4 p.m., launching a new show in that slot, and longtime journalist covering Trump. Do you see what we've been discussing regarding his treatment of women journalists in particular, or journalists in general, as part of a larger pattern of government through hyper-masculinity, exemplified by the White House Law and UFC spectacle on Sunday, but also more consequentially in his need to project power and dominance at the policy level?
I think that's always been a part of it. He has always needed to look strong and dominant. That is part and parcel with who Donald Trump is. It's why he had that show, The Apprentice, and he was the dominant one at the head of the table, lashing out at people that he thought were doing a bad job. You're fired, with that hand gesture. You're fired. It's all up to me. I'm the strong one here. I'm the man. I'm in charge. And that continued on to his campaign as well. He had this moment when he really got angry at me for the very first time. I mean, he had moments where he got angry a lot, but when he really turned on me was in North Carolina. We were at a rally in Raleigh, and Bernie Sanders had just been pushed off stage by protesters. This is 2015, late 2015, and Donald Trump was mocking him for being weak. And at this rally, it was the first time that protesters had coordinated and were interrupting him at, every 5 minutes in intervals. And he left stage early. He did not finish his rally. I mean, I've been covering rallies every day at that point, so I knew how long they went. And this one went like 30 minutes when they usually go 3 hours, like 45 minutes maybe. And I reported that he left the stage abruptly and he lost it. That's what led to that moment in South Carolina when he turned the whole crowd against me, because he was furious that I would report something that made him look weak. He could not handle that. And that's continued. And you were talking a moment ago about the UFC fight on the White House lawn. I mean, that is another projection of it. Strength through violence, through masculinity, blood and punching. And here's how strong we are. We're going to put it in your face right in the White House lawn. This performance of toughness, this performance of the spectacle of American power, with Donald Trump sitting at the head of the fight, like a Roman king sitting at the head of a match in the Colosseum. It's all very blunt and very obvious, and Donald Trump revels in it.
And maybe appointing Pete Hegseth generally and renaming the Department of Defense the Department of War is a top example. Exactly. Intended to signify an attitude. So what's the new show you're hosting, Katy? I see it's in the same time slot, 2 to 4 weekdays Eastern time, as what you were doing.
Okay, so it's called The Moment, and it is in the same time slot, which is great. I'm happy that we get to keep it. We've been having such success with the audience, and I've been at the network now for 11 years, but full-time on the anchor desk for 10 years now, at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, and then both 2 and 3 o'clock. So this is an opportunity to further hone in on what we're doing. And it was, as I was thinking about what I wanted this new version of the show to be and what it should be called, it occurred to me that, we are all living in a series of moments. I mean, we don't talk about the news in past tense any longer. We talk about what is happening from moment to moment, and it's just sped up so much. We're always living in it. Everything is changing one moment to the next, and there's so much live breaking news during the show. But at the same time, you have to consider that these moments have a through line. It's the connective tissue between what is happening constantly And that's what we try to give the audience. Here is what is happening. Here's how it's changing. But here is what is the bigger picture to it all. And so I'm really excited to do that. We have awesome analysts, awesome guests, expert reporters, and we are able to deliver our audience not just the what's happening now, but why it matters, what it means, how they can participate in this democracy. And I just think it's going to be better than ever.
But how do you see the place of MS now? I'm sure you get this question. Formerly MSNBC, now detached from NBC News. Everyone knows it's a left-of-center network, an ardently anti-Trump network. Do you ever think it's part of the problem of so many Americans retreating into information echo chambers?
I have considered that. I've thought about that. I don't think it's part of the problem. I think what we do here is listen, I'm a reporter at heart. I'm not an opinion journalist. I'm not an analyst. I am very much rooted in the facts of the day, but I'm also somebody who sees this with clear eyes. I've been covering Trump for 11 years, and this is no longer a debate about which policy is best. This is not a political argument about do the Republicans have better ideas for this country or do the Democrats have better ideas for this country. This is an issue of Donald Trump trying to fundamentally change who we are and test the boundaries not only of what we can call decent in this country, and I think what we saw on Sunday was a real test of that decency, but what democracy allows. I mean, he's pushing the boundaries of democracy. There was that great reporting from the New York Times, I think it was also Maggie Haberman, about suspending habeas corpus. And somebody within the administration saying, a lawyer saying, no, you can't do that. An arch conservative lawyer saying, no, you can't do that. This is an administration that's trying to tear down the boundaries of democracy, to hand power over to the executive, to treat him more like a king. So this is not a partisan show. It's not a show saying Democrats are inherently better than Republicans. It's a show that's trying to explain how we got here, what we are doing here, and who's enabling this. Also, who's fighting up, pushing back against it. So I don't see it as part of the problem. I see it as a way for Americans on all sides of the aisle, and we have a lot of independents and even a lot of Republican viewers, to get information and at times a perspective on why this is all happening.
Tomorrow on the show, we're going to talk to David Sanger from the New York Times about details of this still really sealed memorandum of understanding between the U.S. and Iran, which is expected to be released on Friday. But for you, one question about the war and the midterms before we get to a little section on that secession question. Politico has a story today that says even if gas prices ease, some Republicans, including those close to the White House, fear that voter perceptions of a sour economy are already baked in. And I don't know about that. Gasoline prices have come down significantly already. But how do you see that and the national contour of the midterms at this point?
I think gasoline prices would have to come down a whole lot. I mean, they were $2.98 before the war started, and now they're still above $4 a gallon. Every analyst I've spoken to has said that gas prices are going to take longer to come down than Donald Trump is messaging. They go up like a rocket, they come down like a feather, is the saying. It just takes time for it to work through the system. Now, maybe there's some world where that changes, and that would benefit Donald Trump greatly. But the economic anger that's out there is real, Bryan. I mean, and you hear it from not just Democrats and independents, but three-time Trump voters who are very angry about what he's focused on. And it's not just the Iran war and gas prices, although that is a huge underlying factor. It's when they look at this White House, they wonder what Donald Trump is focused on. Is he focused on them, as he promised, lowering their costs, making their lives better, or is he focused on himself? And with the UFC fight, the ballroom, the arch, the reflecting pool, the accepting of gifts from Qatar, the trading stocks on companies that he has the ability to oversee and to change their regulatory approvals, et cetera. They're looking at him and they're thinking, this is a guy that appears to be working for himself and self-dealing and more worried about himself, putting his name on the Kennedy Center, et cetera, and lining his own pockets than making us richer and happier and reviving the American dream. I think that, I don't want to say it's baked in at this point, but it is baking. And it's going to be a real problem for the Republicans come November. Again, it's Donald Trump, so anything can happen. But I have never seen in my time covering him a fracture like this within his base.
One way it's baked in, and of course we don't know what's going to happen between now and November, but the wholesale price index that came out last week was increasing at a 6% annual inflation rate at the wholesale level, and so that hasn't even filtered down to the retail level yet, where regular people who buy things would feel it. So that's one thing that I'm watching. We're going to take a very short break, then do one more short segment with Katy Tur on that question of should blue states as well as red states be into secession, and then we'll start our health convening on ultra-processed food. Stay with us. Bryan on WNYC. A few more minutes with Katy Tur, MS Now anchor. Your segment yesterday on the increasing interest in secession on both the left and the right, even as we acknowledge the 250th anniversary of the so-called United States. What did you see that led to that segment?
So this is interesting, and this is not a conversation that's new. There have been versions of it throughout our history. Texas has long been, trying to secede from the United States. It happened before Donald Trump took office, and there's been an argument about whether we are just too big and too divided culturally, politically, geographically, and also with our, specific interests geographically, to fully be a united country. There's too many of us. The land that we occupy is too vast. So this comes up every once in a while, and it definitely comes up when we feel divided or we feel angry more often. And this is a moment where the country obviously feels very divided, from Republicans to Democrats and independents to people who look at all the parties and even the independents and say, this is not working for me. So what caught my eye about this is the bubbling up of support for these movements and what it means and whether we are adequately addressing it. So there's the Cal Exit movement. There's a movement in the Pacific Northwest to unify. There's the Texas group, all of them saying a version of the same thing. The federal government does not work for us. It's stealing from us. It doesn't prioritize us, or it's holding us back, or their values aren't the same. And is it a good idea? There have been a lot of historians and analysts over the years who have argued both sides of this. New York Magazine had an incredible article, and the title of it is escaping me right now, just going through it. This was back in, I think, 2017, 18, when there was a fever pitch about Donald Trump and how nothing was working. And so they went through it, what would happen if California really seceded, or California banded with Oregon and Washington, then Texas banded with Oklahoma, et cetera. And, they had their anti-abortion laws, and then California had the pro-abortion laws, and they had their, produce as much oil as you want laws, and California had its green energy laws, et cetera. And when you take it to its full realization, it does not go well. It does not work the way that anybody believes it will work in an idealistic situation. There's a breakdown between trade laws. There's a breakdown between people, who gets to live where, how you get to travel between the states. So it's a great idea for a lot of folks, but at the same time, it's not workable with our current situation. So we have to, I think, address why people are so frustrated and are so angry. And it's not like it's going away. And so for the next politician, this is really my message yesterday, for the next politician who wants to lead the Republican Party or the Democratic Party, because again, Donald Trump's term is coming up in 2 years and he can't run again. And maybe I'm naive, but I don't think he's going to run again. Or, he's at least not going to try to run again. He might try to be a puppeteer behind the scenes. But for this next generation of leaders in this country, their goal has to be to find a way to bring us back together. Because when you try to sweep our problems under the rug and our frustrations and our disdain for each other under the rug, you end up with what happened in the 1860s. We went to war. We tore this country apart. So we can't continue on this path, and that's what made me interested in it. Where are we right now? What do we need to address? And who can be the next person to come along and say, we went through something really ugly. We all hated each other. But we have a reason to unify. There's a reason to stick together, and it's worth it. There was a good number in one of the polls I cited. 54% believe that most Americans share the same core values. So it really isn't a fight about who we are. It's a fight over whether what holds us together is still stronger than what's pulling us apart.
We read some text a little earlier, people pro or con the idea. Let me get in one caller on each side. Christina in Jersey City is intrigued, I think. Christina, you're on WNYC. Hello.
Mm-hmm. Hello, Bryan. Hello, Katy. Bryan, you're a national treasure. I love listening to your show. It's just so funny that this is the topic because I literally just had a conversation this morning with one of my girlfriends about how I wish that Governor Hochul and Governor Sherrill would get together and just start the quiet secession and start by turning off the spigot of the federal income tax, because I would much rather invest in my own community. I lived in Europe for 3 years, and I just think that model, I do think we're too big. We're 350 million people. How do you effectively govern and provide social safety nets for that many people when we're so vast? And how do you establish a fair poverty line? I mean, I went through a really difficult period in my life. I was underemployed. It was next to impossible. And if you're using the federal poverty line to set up guidelines for New York and New Jersey, forget it. I mean, I live in Jersey City. I talked to someone this morning at the dog park. She's looking at an apartment, a one-bedroom apartment, for $4,500.
Right. Christina, thank you. Very intriguing. And I think on the other side of the question, Monsi in Williamsburg, you're on WNYC. Hello, Monsi.
Hello, good morning. Very happy to weigh in. So I lived in New York for 3 years, and before that, Seattle for 8 years. And there was rumors, which Katy touched on, of us seceding a region called Cascadia. And ever since then, I've wondered why we don't regionally, separate our country in ways that meet the needs of each region, because they are so vastly different. And to the point that Katy also made, to unite our country, I believe, just like in DEI principles, you have to individually meet people's needs. And in this case, it would be the regional needs. If we want everyone to feel empowered or seen or their needs met for us to unite better, I think it needs to be done in a compartmentalized way. So I'm all about it. I have no idea how that could happen.
Oh, I misinterpreted what my screener told me about your call. So you are interested in this idea. You had also said, I think, off the air, we shouldn't secede areas to MAGA. Is that a reservation for you about this?
Not at all. No, I think it should be very anti-MAGA. I think it should be very anti that. Yes. Yeah. Just, I think it's been I don't think Cascadia is pro-MAGA at all.
Right.
I think it's pro-Indigenous people, sorry.
Right,
but,
not Cascadia, not the Pacific Northwest. So it was my confusion. And Katy, it's funny. I thought the right-left contrast, the way you presented it yesterday, was interesting on this. Because the spokesman who you cited from Cascadia, the Pacific Northwest states, wants secession because they say their values and those of, say, Arkansas, the example he gave, don't align. The movement in Texas, on the other hand, wants secession because it claims the federal government is stealing from it, as you reported. And those are such characteristic complaints from each side. Trump and his people claim things are rigged. The left is disillusioned because they doubt the virtue of the country's values, social justice. So I thought that was an interesting piece of it.
I understand it, and I won't lie. I mean, I've had daydreamed about what it would be like if we were able to geographically, as that last caller said, separate or from the rest of the country. So you do look at the Nordic states, for instance, in Europe, and you look at their social safety net and what they're able to accomplish and the quality of life, and people are just so much happier. And there's free healthcare, and there's free childcare, and there's free education, and God, it just sounds great. And when I consider why that does not happen here, I think one of the answers is because we are so big and we are so diverse and we can't agree on anything, and our values don't align and our interests don't align, and we're just giant. There's too many of us and too big of a space. I get that. But I also think that there is something beautiful and valuable about that diversity, even when it's ugly in this country. We have accomplished amazing things as Americans. We have sent people to the moon and again, looped them around the moon again the other day. We've developed technologies that have changed the world in a good way. There's all sorts of bad stuff as well. I'm not going to deny any of that. But we were the foundation of democracy, and we spread that throughout the world. We have done a lot of good. We've been on the cutting edge of a lot of good in this world. We are living through a very ugly moment where we feel very divided and we feel like our neighbors are strangers, but it doesn't have to be this way. It doesn't have to. And I think there is a political leader out there, and I don't know who it is yet, who can bring us back together and can go to that core value that we all have, that Americans are decent. And that's what most Americans still believe, despite the anger, despite the vitriol, despite the, the worry and the fear and the suspicion. At our core, I think we do still believe that our fellow Americans are decent people.
A thought for the 250th birthday of the United States of America from Katy Tur. Hey, good luck with the new show. Thanks for coming on.
Bryan, thanks so much for having me. I love being with you, and I'm excited to listen about the processed foods.